Hi, Bob Barber from Poliigon here. In this video we're going to be taking the wooden floor material that we made in part 1 and apply some surface imperfections, namely some smudges and some scratches, to give our floor a more realistic lived-in feel. Before we head over to Max though, let's take a look at the materials, or textures anyway, that we are going to be using. First we're going to make use of this floor smudges one and this gun scratches one, both of which I've already downloaded and saved to my hard drive, and I have, or I will, include a link to them below the video. Good, right, let's head over to Max. Right, so here's our scene from last time. Our wood floor material all good and ready to go. If you'll remember, the material converter brought in the vast majority of the maps. Well, it brought in all the maps and did the majority of the work for us. All we had to do to increase the reflectivity, the shininess of our floor, was adding this multiply node into our gloss map. But before we get to work on these nodes, I want to take a moment just to explain what it is we're about to do. We're going to be taking our original roughness map, where the dark areas are more shiny, more reflective, and the brighter areas are less shiny. And then we're going to import our smudges texture. We're going to take the brighter areas of that map, i.e. the footprints and smudges and whatnot, and add that over the top of our roughness map. So on the actual material, wherever there's footprints and smudges and whatnot, the reflections will be more blurred, less reflective, just in those areas, which is exactly the sort of effect that we want. Once we have this sort of combined roughness map, we'll then feed that into our wooden floor material. Okay, let's get on with the nodes then. First thing we need to do is bring in our smudges overlay. So let's go to maps, Redshift, and then a Redshift bitmap. I'm going to double click on that and name it smudges, just so we know what we're doing. Then I'm going to go to file name, navigate to the folder where my smudges are. Here we go. And it's the overlay 16-bit 4K that I'll be using. So we'll hit open on that, and that's our smudges texture all loaded in. Now we need a way to quickly preview the texture on our floor plane. Okay. Now the easiest way to do that in Redshift is to add in a sort of a temporary dummy material. Okay. So let's go to materials, Redshift renderer, and then Redshift incandescent, which is basically an emission shader. Yeah. Now, if I click on our floor plane and assign that new material to our floor, and click the play button here, so it's a live render. There we go. So our floor disappears. Our floor's just become now an emission plane. Yeah. So no scene lighting or anything like that will affect it. So when we feed a map into it, we'll see just the map, as I'll demonstrate now. There we go. Now I'll call this preview, just so we know what it is. We'll be deleting this at the end. It's not something that it's not even a step you need to do. I just find it really helpful to be able to preview the texture actually on the geometry that it's being assigned to. Okay, so now that we've got our preview, I can instantly see we do need to make an adjustment. You'll see here there's an option for enable gamma override. We're going to click that and it will brighten the image up like so. Now the reason we're doing that is we don't want Max or Redshift to get in the way of this texture. We don't want it to apply any gamma corrections or anything like that. We just want the raw data from the image, which is what this tick lets us do. As a general rule, any map that doesn't contribute to the color of a material will have this override on, or be imported with the correct gamma, but that's the same difference. But basically our color and reflection maps will be having color corrections applied to them, whereas the gloss, normal, and displacement maps won't be. And it's the same with our smudges. We don't want that to have any color correction, and that's why we need to remember to enable the gamma override. So now we've got that sorted, let's have a look at our tiling and offset. Yeah. So I want these footprints to be a little bigger. If you look at the layout of the floorboards, these would be some really quite tiny feet. So let's change that to about a 0.6. Yep, that looks good. And then we can just slightly adjust with the offset if we want to. See, I know that the light's going to be shining in the middle here, so I'm trying to make sure there's a nice clump of footprints around that sort of spot. Yeah, I think that'll work quite nice. And that's it. We've got our tiling. So next thing we need to do is feed, or not feed, but overlay the smudges onto our roughness map. This is the roughness map that's currently being used for the floor, yeah? So, which is just a gloss map that's been inverted. Now, what we're going to do is add in a composite node, okay? I'm going to double click on that. Then I'm going to click add a new layer. So now it's giving us 2 layers to work with because we have 2 images that we're trying to composite. We're going to feed the original roughness map into layer 1 and our smudges into layer 2, like so. And then if I feed that into the preview, all we see is our floor smudges. Now that's because the composite node by default, you'll see layer 2, the mix type is set, or the blending mode, sorry, is set to normal. Now on normal, with the opacity at 100%, layer 2 will completely replace layer 1. Yeah. So if I lower this now, you'll see there's our layer 1. But we don't want that sort of effect. We want it to basically take the brighter areas of this image and overlay them on top of our original roughness map. So the option for that would be screen, like so. So now you can see our smudges are in there, and you can see just about see the roughness map underneath. The problem we have here, similar to what happened in our in the first video with the gloss map, is it's too bright. Yeah, it's too much of an effect. So in the exact same way that we adjusted our gloss map, we're going to do the same with our smudges map. Now this can be done via the composite node. We could just lower the opacity like so, and that's literally the effect that we're after. But just for the purpose of keeping things the same, the other route you could go down would be to add in an RGB multiply node and place it in between the smudges and the composite. And then exactly like we had with that one, we now have the control here. Yeah. So we'll leave that at about the halfway mark. Hit OK. And now we should be able to feed this into our reflection roughness input, assign this material back to the floor, and we can start to see our smudges coming into effect. Now remember, we are going for quite a subtle look, which is what we've got here. But if you need more of a obvious kind of smudging, then you just play with this multiply value. But I'm going to leave that at about the halfway mark. That should work fine for us. Okay, so with that in place, the next thing we're going to do is affect our normal map. Yeah, we want to bring in those scratches and then alter the existing bump / normal map with the scratches. So if I hit the right mouse button again, go to Maps, Redshift Renderer, and we can get another Redshift bitmap. And this time we're going to need gun scratches 03. There we are. Now with the gun scratches, you'll notice there's a lot of different maps you can choose from. We've got overlays, normal maps, displacement maps, all have their uses for different purposes. I found for this though, the best one to use is the overlay one. So I'm going to use the 16-bit 4K overlay there, like so. And I'm also going to bring our preview shader down and reassign it to the floor. Now that's currently still got the roughness map plugged into it, so I'll disconnect that and instead feed in our scratches, which at this point I'll name, so we know what we're doing. And now we can see our scratches map. Again, we're going to need to enable the gamma override because this does not contribute to the color. We want the raw data from this texture. And now we can see we need to adjust the tiling. In this instance, we want more tiling rather than less. The scratches are too big, we want to make them smaller. So let's try a value for about 3. I think that will work pretty well. And you can adjust the offsets as well if you need to. I'll leave it like that. Okay. We're not going to need the preview anymore. That's the end of its usefulness. So I'm going to hit delete and get rid of that. we have our scratches all tiled and ready to go. Now we've got 2 more steps to make here. First, we need to tell Redshift that this is something we're going to use for height information, i.e. we're going to turn it into a bump map. So I'm going to go Redshift renderer, Redshift bump map, there we are, and then feed the texture into the texture input. Now that has now converted that into a bump map. I could feed this directly into our bump map here, assign the material back to the floor, like so, and you'll see we have our scratches. Problem being though is the normal information from our original material is no longer connected in any way, shape or form, so we're losing all of the detail within that normal map, which is not what we want. So instead we need a bump blender. There we go, I'll put that there. Now this allows us to basically take a normal map like so. I'll put that in the base input, feed that into the bump map of the shader. So now we've got our normals back. Our original normal information is back in our material, but we've lost the scratches obviously. But now we can feed this into the layer 0 input, double click on it, and it will give us the blend weight here to adjust. And now if I set this up to 1, which will be too high, but it will let us see that it's working, we now have our original normal map with the scratches overlaid. Brilliant. So now it's just a matter of adjustment. Okay, so first of all we need to invert what this is doing, because at the moment the scratches are trying to bump out of the floor rather than cut into them, which isn't what we want at all. So we'll change this height scale to a -1 rather than 1, like so. Now they're cutting into the floor, and now it's just a matter of adjusting the strength because it's way too high at the moment. So let's try that at about 0.03. I think that was about right. Yeah, I think that'll work nice. And that's it. I'm just going to run a final render now. So let's close down our material editor and stuff. Let's make sure my render settings are good. They are. Okay, I'm going to, in fact, I will leave that at that, sorry. I'll hit render now, and then I'll pause the recording. Right, and there we have it, our finished wooden floor, including surface imperfections. It's actually turned out really quite nicely. I think the scratches are spot on. Floor smudges too, maybe just slightly stronger. So yeah, good render. So in summary, we've taken our original wooden floor material and added in some surface imperfections, namely some scratches and smudges, to give our floor a more realistic, used look.